The atmosphere in the town was tense after the goddess' attack on the church. David, though young, had taken charge, rallying the prayer warriors and his parents to embark on a 21-day prayer and fasting program to break the covenant with the river goddess once and for all. Every evening, the church was filled with the sound of fervent prayers and worship as David led the church with a strength that bailed his age. But David's spirit was uneasy. Each night after prayers, he felt the goddess' chilling words echoing in his mind. This is not over. On the 12th day of the fast, David was returning home from school in his father's car. The skies were grey and the air felt heavier than usual. He sat quietly in the back seat, clutching his Bible and his school bag, while the driver hummed softly to himself while driving. Halfway home, the car began to sputter and jerk. "Ah, what's going on now?" the driver muttered to himself, pulling over to the side of the deserted road. David shifted uncomfortably in the seat. Something didn't feel right. "Hold on, Master David. I will just check what's wrong," the driver said as he got out and popped the hood of the car. David's unease grew. He gripped his Bible tighter and closed his eyes to pray, his voice barely a whisper. "Lord, cover me with your blood. Protect me from every trap of the enemy." As the driver examined the engine, the bushes nearby rustled unnaturally. David's eyes shot open, his heart raced. "Sir," he called out to the driver, "Did you hear that? Did you hear that noise?" But before the driver could respond, 3 men in dark clothes and masks emerged from the bush, moving swiftly towards the car. "Hey, who are you? What do you want?" the driver shouted, stepping forward to shield David. But the men didn't answer. One of them struck the driver on the head with the butt of a gun, and he crumpled to the ground. "Come here, boy," one of the men growled, opening the car door. David tried to resist, kicking and shouting, "Jesus, help me!" But the men were too strong. They dragged him out of the car and into the dense bush, muffling his cries with a piece of cloth. The men carried David deep into the forest, far from the road. When they reached a clearing, they threw him to the ground and tied his hands and feet with thick ropes. David looked around, his heart pounded. The place was eerie, with dark trees towering overhead and strange symbols carved into the ground. A small shrine stood in the center of the clearing, its surface covered with strange objects, bones, candles, and bowl filled with musty liquid. "Why are you doing this, and who are you?" David demanded, his voice steady despite his fear. One of the men laughed harshly. "You think you are untouchable, little prophet. The river goddess says you have defied her." Another man added, "Tonight, we will offer you as a sacrifice. She will be pleased and you will be gone for good." David's heart sank, but he refused to show fear. "You can try," he said boldly, "but my God is greater than any goddess. You won't win," he said to them. Meanwhile, hours after the adoption, David's driver regained consciousness on the side of the road, his head throbbing from the blow he had received. Dazed and panicked, he looked around and realized the car was still there, but David was gone. "Oh my God, what have I done?" he cried out, guilt washing over him. He quickly got back into the car and sped to Pastor Kenneth's house, trembling as he explained the ordeal to David's parents. Pastor Kenneth froze, his face pale with fear. His wife let out a heart-wrenching cry, clutching her chest, as if the weight of the news might crush her. "Who would do this to our son?" she sobbed. Without hesitation, Pastor Kenneth grabbed his car keys. "We are going to the police," he said firmly. After filing a report at the police station and receiving nothing but promises of delayed action, the family knew what to do next. They drove straight to the church, where Pastor Kenneth called the prayer warriors and other members of the Mountain of Miracles to join them to intercede for David. By midnight, the church was alive with fervent prayers. The members prayed with an intensity born of desperation, calling on God to protect and deliver David from his captors. "Lord, wherever he is, send your angels to guard him out of danger, please," Pastor Kenneth prayed, his voice breaking. Hours passed and night fell. The men lit fire around the shrine, chanting in low voices. David silently prayed, asking God for deliverance. Suddenly, one of the men, a younger and nervous-looking one, approached David. His hands trembled as he loosened David's gauge slightly. "Why are you doing this?" David asked, his voice firm but gentle. "Why did you people kidnap me?" The man hesitated. I don't want to be here," he admitted in a whisper. "But if I refuse, the others will kill me. The goddess doesn't forgive betrayal." "You don't have to do this," David said urgently. "This isn't your fight. God can protect you just like he will protect me." The man looked conflicted. "If I untie you, she will come for me too," he said, his voice breaking. "She has no power over you if you choose God," David replied. "Help me, and I promise God will fight for you." Just as the chanting grew louder and the men prepared to present David to the shrine, the young man made his decision. He slipped behind David and caught the ropes binding his hands. "Run!" he hissed. David didn't hesitate. He grabbed his Bible and sprinted into the forest, his heart pounding as the other men shouted behind him. "Stop him!" one of them yelled, grabbing a torch. The forest seemed endless, but David kept running, whispering prayers unto his breath. "Lord, guard my steps, be my shield and deliverer. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty," he prayed as he ran. Suddenly, the air around him grew still, and a blinding light appeared in the trees ahead. The men chasing him screamed in terror as the light grew brighter, forcing them to shield their eyes. From the light came a booming voice. "You will not harm my servant." The men dropped their weapon and fled into the darkness, leaving David alone in the clearing, surrounded by the heavenly glow. As the light faded, David fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you, Lord," he whispered. In the silence that followed, he heard a voice in his spirit. "David, the battle is not over, but I am with you. Return to the church and prepare. The time has come to break every chain." David rose to his feet, his fear replaced by an unshakable determination. The river goddess had thrown her worst at him, but his faith had prevailed. It was time to end her reign of terror once and for all. Meanwhile, after escaping the forest, David wandered through the dense trees for hours, guided only by moonlight. The sound of the forest, whole rustling leaves, and distant whispers made his skin crawl, but he pressed on, clutching his little Bible tightly. He whispered prayer as he walked. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Finally, as dawn began to break, David stumbled onto a clear path. His heart soared when he saw the main road just ahead. Exhausted but relieved, he ran towards the main road. As he reached the road, a car slowed to a stop beside him. The driver, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, rolled down his window. "Hey, young man, what are you doing out here all alone? This isn't a safe place, especially at this time of the day." David hesitated for a moment, then decided to tell the truth. "Sir, I was kidnapped, but I escaped. I have been walking all night. Please, I need help." The man's eyes widened as he listened to David's story. Then recognition dawned on his face. "Wait, are you David, the boy preacher from the Mountain of Miracle Church?" David nodded slowly. The man let out a soft laugh of amazement. "What a mighty God we serve! I am a member of that church. I have seen you preach. Come on, son, come on, get into the car. Let me take you back to where you belong." The man drove David back to the church, where prayers were still raging inside. As they approached, David could hear the voices of his parents and the congregation calling out to God. "Thank you, Jesus," David whispered as tears filled his eyes. The car came to a stop outside the church, and David stepped out. The man followed behind him as they entered the sanctuary. "David!" his mother screamed, her voice filled with joy and relief. She ran to him, throwing her arms around him as she wept uncontrollably. Pastor Kenneth joined her, pulling David into his embrace. The congregation erupted in praise, some crying, others clapping, and many falling to their knees in thanksgiving. "You are safe, my boy," Pastor Kenneth said, his voice trembling. "God has delivered you." As the congregation calmed, David stood before them, his voice steady but emotional. "The enemy thought he could take me, but God had other plans. Even in the darkest moments, I felt his presence guiding me. I escaped because of your prayers and his mercy." The man who had rescued David also spoke. "I was on my way to another town for business when I saw this boy. I almost drove past him. But someone told me to stop. I had no idea it was David, but God clearly had other plans." The church erupted again in praise and worship, tears flowing freely as they celebrated God's faithfulness. As the prayers ended and the church began to quit, David pulled his parents aside. "The goddess isn't done with us," he said, his tone grave. "She will come again, and we need to be ready." Pastor Kenneth placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "We will fight this battle together, son. This battle isn't just ours. It is the Lord's battle." David nodded his head, his eyes filled with a resolve far beyond his years. The enemy had tried to silence him, but his faith was now stronger than ever. The atmosphere at the church was electric with fervent prayers. David led the congregation with tears streaming down his face, his voice trembling with resolute. His father, Pastor Kenneth, was on his knees, joining the prayer warriors as they cried out to God for his mercies and deliverance. But while their spiritual battle raged on in the church, something equally life-altering was unfolding at home. David's mother sat alone in their living room, surrounded by her son's childhood clothes and pictures. As she carefully folded a tiny shirt, a bittersweet smile played on her lips. Memories of the years of waiting, the endless prayers, and the miraculous arrival of David flooded her mind. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she recalled the day the doctor had told them, "Congratulations, you are 8 weeks gone." The joy in her heart had been indescribable then. But suddenly, her smile faltered, her brow furrowed, as she began piecing something together. 8 weeks pregnant? She whispered to herself. She quickly grabbed a calendar, flipping back to that fateful year. Her hands trembled as she counted. They had visited the river goddess exactly 5 weeks before the doctor's announcement. That means I was already 3 weeks pregnant before we ever visited the river. She gasped. The realization hit her like a thunderbolt. The child they thought the river goddess had given them was never hers to begin with. David was always a gift from God. He felt lightheaded, struggling to breathe. The guilt of all these years weighed down on her, suffocating her. How had she never realized this? Why had she allowed her fear and desperation to blind her to God's faithfulness? Without a second thought, she grabbed her car keys. She had to tell her family and the church what she had just discovered. As she drove towards the church, her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. The guilt, the joy, the revelation. It was all too much to process. "God, I am so sorry," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We didn't trust you and we made a terrible mistake. But please, let this truth set David free," she prayed as she drove. Her grip on the steering wheel tightened as she replayed the memory of the river goddess mocking them, claiming credit for a miracle that was never hers. But her frantic thought distracted her. She didn't see the truck barreling towards the intersection. The collision was sudden and violent. Her car spun off the road, crashing into a lamppost. Back at the church, David was still praying when his father's phone buzzed. Pastor Kenneth hesitated for a moment, not wanting to break the flow of the prayers, but something told him to check. His heart sank as he answered the call. The words hit him like a punch to his gut. "Your wife has been in a car accident. She is at St. Mary's Hospital," the caller said. "David, we need to go now," Pastor Kenneth said as his voice was shaking. The prayer warriors paused, sensing something was wrong, as father and son rushed out of the church. At the hospital, Pastor Kenneth and David found her on a stretcher, being prepared for surgery. Her face was pale, her body battered, but her eyes lit up when she saw them. "Kenneth," she whispered, her voice very weak. "I am here," he said, kneeling beside her and gripping her hand. "I am here, my love. You are going to be okay." But she shook her head, urgency in her eyes. "Listen to me. I need to tell you something before it is too late." "Don't say that," Kenneth pleaded, his voice breaking. "You will pull through this, please. Don't say that." But she tightened her grip on his hand. David was not hers. she said, her voice coming out in gasp. I was already pregnant before we went to the river. God gave us David, not the goddess. Kenneth froze, his mind reeling. What? What are you saying? She nodded weakly, tears glistening in her eyes. I counted the weeks. David is God's miracle to us. We were deceived by the goddess. Before she could say more, the doctor moved in. We need to take her now, one of them said. Kenneth kissed her forehead, his heart breaking. I love you, he whispered as they wheeled her into the surgery room. Kenneth turned to David, his face pale and his voice trembling. Your mother, she said, you were never the goddess child. She said you are always belong to God. David's eyes widened, and for a moment he was speechless. Then a wave of relief and joy washed over him. I knew it, he said, his voice filled with emotion and happiness. I knew God wouldn't abandon me. I knew it from the beginning. When they returned to the church and shared the revelation to the prayer warriors, they erupted into shouts of praise. The enemy's hold is broken, one elder declared. David stood before his heart swelling with gratitude. Lord, he prayed aloud, thank you for revealing the truth. Thank you for never letting me go. Thank you for those who call upon your name shall never be put to shame. The revelation that David was not the child of the river goddess empowered the church to intensify their prayers. The entire prayer warriors joined David and his family in fasting and intercession, determined to break every lingering stronghold. But the river goddess, furious at being exposed, after trying to kill David's mother so that the truth will not get out, she still didn't succeed. She then prepared for one last desperate attack. On the 21st night of prayer and fasting, the church gathered as usual, the air thick with anticipation and spiritual tension. Everyone could sense that something monumental was about to happen. David stood at the altar leading the prayer warriors in worship. Suddenly, a bone-chilling wind swept through the church, distinguishing the lights and plunging the room into darkness. A menacing voice echoed through the sanctuary. You think you have won? You dare to defy me, boy? I will show you my powers. The voice sent shivers down everyone's spine, but David stood firm. I am not afraid of you. For the devil came to steal, to kill, and to destroy. But the Son of Man came for us to have life and have it in abundance. He declared, his voice unwavering. I am a child of God, and you have no claim over me. The goddess appeared in a swelling mist, her form terrifying yet weakened by the prayers that had been tearing down her stronghold. She laughed mockingly. You belong to me, David. Your life was my gift. Without me, you will not exist. David raised his Bible high, his voice filled with authority. You are a liar. God gave me life, not you. Your power is built on deception, and your time is up. The congregation erupted into fervent prayers, their voices rising in unison. The atmosphere in the church shifted as the presence of God descended like a consuming fire. The goddess unleashed her fury, summoning water to flood the church. Waves of water gushed through the sanctuary, rising quickly and threatening to drown everyone. But David stood his ground unshaken. "Lord, this is your battle," he cried. "Show your power and deliver your people, that they may know that you are God." As he prayed, the water suddenly stopped rising. It began to recede, as if an invisible force was pushing it back. The congregation clapped and shouted in victory, but the goddess was not done. She lunged towards David, her form morphing into a terrifying serpent. But before she could strike, a blinding light filled the room. A figure clothed in radiant light appeared, standing between David and the goddess. The congregation fell to their knees as the divine presence filled the room. The figure, unmistakably an angel, spoke with a voice that vibrates through the church. "Enough! The child belongs to the Most High God. Your lies and scheme are over. Depart and never return again." The goddess screamed in rage, her form dissolving into the mist. The flood waters vanished and the air became still. The presence of evil was completely eradicated. David fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you, Lord," he whispered. "Thank you for fighting for me. Thank you for giving me victory." The congregation erupted into praise, their voice ringing out in celebration. Pastor Kenneth embraced David, his heart full of gratitude and relief. "Son," Pastor Kenneth said, his voice thick with emotion, "you are finally free. You are free. The chains are broken." David nodded, his face shining with peace. "Yes, I am free. And now I can truly serve God without fear." From that day forward, David's ministry grew exceptionally. His testimonies of deliverance inspired countless people to return to God, and his prayers brought healing and freedom to many. David's mother also survived the surgery as she regained herself fully and came back home. During her stay in the hospital, the doctors realized that she was with child. She was pregnant at the age of 58. There is nothing impossible for God to do. His parents, though still haunted by their mistake, used their story to warn others about the dangers of seeking help outside of God. They became advocates of faith and patience, sharing their testimony far and wide. Put your faith solely in God. Trust His timing and stand firm in His truth. Even in the face of darkness, God's light will always prevail, bringing redemption, freedom, and victory. Do not run faster than your shadow.